Um, so I never get sick. I should never say never. I was saying that ours is a world of reciprocity. And we give and receive. It's like the breath of life. We inhale and we exhale. We receive and we give. We receive and we give. And the truth is that we can't outgive God. So, many years ago I read a book about, it's called How to Get Out of Debt, Stay Out of Debt, and Prosper. And it really made an impact on me. And the author suggested that manage your money, how to manage your money by tithing first, saving second, and living on the balance. And there's just the whole concept that there's always enough, no matter what, because the universe is going to supply you with whatever you need, because there's nothing more generous than that one that I call God or the universe. It has given us such a beautiful cosmos, such a beautiful world, and amazingly balanced in all ways. And we can't ever give that generosity of spirit. John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church, said, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways that you can, in all the places that you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can." And I was inspired by this fellow. His name is Rick Russell Montes. And Rick was at yoga one day. He had a yoga studio. And his receptionist told him that she had given her kidney to a relative. And he thought, hey, that's a really cool idea. So he took it upon himself to find out how to donate his kidneys. And he started what they called a chain. It was chain 147. And Rick was instrumental in creating the chain that gave liver donations to kidney donations to over 60 people. And the way a chain works is that if you have a relative who needs a kidney, and you are not a good donor, then you give your kidney and someone else will give their kidney, and they maybe will be a better donor for your loved one. So from his generous initiation of giving his kidney, 60 people were able to receive kidneys, which is the longest chain that they've ever had. And I like this story because it is like the supercharged pay it forward mentality. And also, it tells us, once more, it demonstrates how closely connected we all are. As Kathy says, the honeycomb effect. We are all so interconnected that this story of giving your kidney is powerful. And I think there's another aspect to generosity that we can talk about, and that is that we talk about so often about how our pain and our sorrow gets stifled within ourselves. But also, our love can get stifled within ourselves. We have in our culture sort of a concept and an idea that we have to be careful about who we love and in what manner we love. And as young children, we absolutely know how it feels to be loving and generous, but for multiple reasons, we are dissuaded from doing that. And that kind of love and generosity can get stuck in our body and cause us to be miserable in many ways. And I'm thoroughly convinced that in this time of technology, that young kids don't have the same outlet for feeling important within their family and feeling as though they're contributing to the well-being of the family. And there's a lovely story that I ran across about a young girl who was in the checkout line with her mom, and she was begging and begging for a candy bar. And her mother said, no, you know, we don't need that now. No, we don't need that now. And so finally her mother gave in. Bought the candy bar for the little girl. And she immediately turned and handed it to the little boy behind her. And her mother said, why did you do that? She said, I gave it to him, and because I heard his mom talking that they didn't have the money for a candy bar because she hadn't worked and she wouldn't be having any extra money until she found another job. So this little girl had, on behalf of the little strange boy behind her, had decided to share her candy bar. And we have that sort of innate ability to love and to care that sometimes gets held back. So I like to think of generosity as small offerings. And we do those generous acts, those offerings to the universal oneness in thousands of ways. Washing the dishes or holding the door for someone, just small offerings, because as the master teacher Jesus said, do to me as the least of you, or some such thing. Somebody knows that quote better than me.
Unto the least of these, my brethren, you do it unto me.
What you do to somebody else, you have done to me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there you go. So we all know it, right? We got it. We got the whole idea. Now, so Jesus also talked about the widow's mite, and he was in the temple, and the wealthy people were coming and giving huge donations, and he stood there and he watched as the widow came and put 2 coins in the donations, and he called his apostles and he said, this is really giving. The people that have a lot of money to spare and to share are not absolutely giving from the same place, the same heart. And so the widow who had nothing to give and gave her 2 little coins was actually being more generous and kinder than the wealthy. And that's the story that always struck me when I was growing up. It's not so much that what you give, it's just from the place and of the heart that you give. What it means to you to give something that you don't miss is not actually the same tenure or texture of giving. There's a story about Mary Harris, who was having lunch. She was an ad executive, and she was having lunch in Soho, and a fellow, Jay Valentine, who was one of our precious people, a homeless guy, came up and asked her if she had any spare change. And she said no, she didn't. She only had her card. And she said to him, "Can I trust you?" And she gave him her American Express, I know, platinum card, handed it to him. And her friends were all horrified and astonished that she would be so foolish. She said, "No, he'll be back." And sure enough, in a short period of time, he did come back. And he had bought deodorant, and he had bought soap and cigarettes and a bottle of vitamin water, all for about $25. And then he brought her American Express platinum card back, which I thought was just such a lovely story of generosity and faith and trust in humankind. And I think that when we trust people, they're going to rise to that level. And when we expect to be taken advantage of, when we expect to be mistreated or otherwise treated poorly, then that's what's going to happen to us, because it is a reciprocal universe. And because when we put our thoughts out into the world, that's what's going to come back to us. So I have a collection of little stories of generosity that I want to share. A fellow was talking about, he worked in a convenience store, and a man came in who had a cane, and he was pretty much blind, and he had gone to the greeting cards, and he held the greeting cards up close to his face because he couldn't read them. And the story goes that he was struggling to read them. Just as I was about to walk over and offer help, a big truck driver asked him if he needed assistance reading, and then proceeded to read almost every single greeting card out loud until the elderly man smiled and said, "That's perfect. My wife will love that one." Another story is of a janitor who was in an investment firm in LA. Since the engine of my truck failed 4 months ago, I've been without a vehicle. In some cities that might be okay, but in LA, sprawl with subpar public transit, it's been difficult. The CEO, who is usually hard on everyone and emotionally removed from any personal issues of his employees, overheard a phone conversation I was having with my wife, in which I was apologizing for not spending enough time with the family due to the long public transit commute times. 10 minutes later, the CEO caught up with me in the hall and handed me a set of car keys. The new executive company car arrived. One of them is for me. It sounds like you need it more than I do. I have another set of wheels. The car's parked out back, and it's yours for as long as you want to use it. So there's another story, and then I'll quit telling my stories. Ross Chad of Lowell, Michigan, had an extra Christmas tree that he didn't need. He had 2 Christmas trees, and he only needed one, or wanted one, so he put the other on Craigslist. And he didn't think very much about it. But he got 40 responses from people needing a Christmas tree. And several of them said, you know, we haven't had a Christmas tree in our house for years because we just haven't been able to afford it. One family said that they had 6 children, and they had put a piece of paper up on the wall with a Christmas tree drawn on it. So Ross Chad decided that he would go out and buy 40 Christmas trees for everyone that had answered his Craigslist request for a Christmas tree. And then someone else supplied all of the decorations for the Christmas tree. And things like that we don't often think about being a luxury so much, or not quite a necessity, but high on our list of needs and wants. Well, here's one more now. Jeff Schinenberger, who is the author of More or Less, talked about his neighbor, Clarence. And Clarence, he says, is the hardest worker he's ever encountered. And Clarence doesn't have a home. He lives in the neighborhood. He's part of the neighborhood, but he doesn't have a home. He lives behind the church in the alley. And Clarence has a lawnmower, and that's how he gains and makes his living, is by mowing people's lawns. So Jeff wondered if how could he be a neighbor to someone who didn't have a home? Does that constitute neighborliness? And also he said that he was friends with Clarence, but he wasn't sure that Clarence was friends with him, because he didn't know what that relationship was like. So one day, the doorbell rang, and Clarence was at the door, and he said, "Jeff, can I use your cell phone?" And Jeff said, "Well, sure, of course you can." And so Clarence made a telephone call about some work, about cleaning someone's yard. And he said, "You can call me back at this number. This is my friend Jeff's phone." And so Jeff was really touched by that, knowing that Clarence could consider him a friend and that they had that kind of close relationship, even though up until that moment it had been out of balance. So I just want to remind us that giving and receiving, the sacred of generosity, is what this holiday season is about and what life is about. That we offer a gift to the divine every time we offer a gift to anyone else. We offer a gift to the divine every time we offer someone help in some way, because it is God that we're speaking with. It is God that we are interacting with. So I just want to remind you of John Wesley's quote once more. "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can." So each one of you, offers so much to me just by your presence, just by who you are, by being here every Sunday, and by supporting this community. So I appreciate your generosity of spirit. I appreciate your generosity of the divine that you are. So I wish you a lovely holiday season as we move into the holidays. I just wish you the best and the most joyous holiday season, because I love you, each one of you. Namaste.
Namaste.
So I'd invite the practitioners to stand and join with me as we hold this community in prayer. As I move within to that sacred place, that temple of all good, the residence of the divine that expresses in me and through me, I allow myself to be so filled with gratitude for the generosity of the universe, for the generosity of the divine. So grateful for the amazing way that the universe is put together, the way it is so balanced and so reciprocal. I give thanks for the way that all of nature is in balanced harmony. And I hold in my heart the knowing that humankind is moving to that same level of peace and harmony and balance. Despite what I may hear from news sources, despite what I may hear from angry, hurt people, I know that God is aligning everything in perfection. It cannot be otherwise. So at this moment, I allow myself to feel the peace, to settle into that peace and knowing. I allow myself to do my portion of the goodness. I allow myself to do the next right thing in love. I allow myself to be an ambassador of goodness and love on behalf of that universal one that I call God. I allow myself to acknowledge and know that all is well, and to notice the places that it is unfolding in perfection. So with a grateful, open heart, I allow myself to be the ambassador of generosity for the divine. That every act that I perform is an act of love. And so I celebrate the good. I give thanks for it, and I declare it done by saying, and so it is. Thank you, Pastor.